of the, just to clarify so many questions that are lingering around that particular family. I thank you.
Senator Beatrice Akinyi. If you're in the first round, honorable senators, allow others also to get an opportunity to seek clarifications.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. My clarification is to the DP's team. On a video that was played yesterday at a relocation point in Nairobi County, I wanted clarification from the DP's team on whether their client is aware that county governments are distinct governments, and if so, Honorable Speaker, did the DP consult with the county government of Nairobi over the challenges of relocation at Kayole? And two, Honorable Speaker, there was a video that was played, either one or two, involving a speech at either rally by His Excellency the President of the Republic of Kenya. My question is, what was the essence of that video? And is it to show that two wrongs would make one right? Thank you.
Senator Lelegwe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My clarification is to the witness of the National Assembly. Yesterday, during the cross-examination, the advocate of the Deputy President, you asserted that you have identified several companies which you have no issues and to which you do not attribute any misconduct in their dealings. Given this context, could you inform the necessity for including these companies in the present impeachment motion? Thank you.
Senator Eddy.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I have one question for the witness in chief and one clarity question from the counsel for the Deputy President, and particularly Counsel Tom Macharia. So I'll start with the Honorable Mutuse. Honorable Mutuse, may you help this House understand whether all the companies that you indicated are for the sons and the spouse of the Deputy President, and whether you established how old they are and estimated the net worth of those companies. Did you manage to estimate the net worth of those companies, and how did you do that? To the senior counsel, the counsel Tom Macharia, in the exploration of ground number 4, you led this House to look at the particulars of the coalition document, the coalition agreement. May you help us understand how we should interpret Article 91 of the Constitution and Article 232 of the Constitution with regards to your response on government being a company equal to having shares and not the country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Sek.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The question also goes to Honorable Mutuse. Wanted to make a clarification on the issue of Peterson Jomo, the affidavit on the olive Garden Hotel on the appointment of Julian Jahenda as the secretary or agent, and the letter to the Public Service Commission through the clerk of the National Assembly by volume 8A, page 1, gives a different person by the name Makar Juliana Jahenda. Why do we have different names here? You need to clarify because it has a different person altogether, two different people altogether. Second clarification is on the issue of the award of the tender on the proposed refurbishment of the DP's residence in Karen. Honorable Mutuse, the government, through the State House Controller, signed that contract, wanted to know what is the relationship of this contract with the DP. Now that you're saying it has some issues, what's all about the contract and the company that did that refurbishment?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've got and the other one, actually both for clarification by the Council for the Deputy President. Yesterday, in the course of your cross-examination, you took us to page 410 of volume 3. This is with regard to the accusation where His Excellency the Deputy President divulged or accused the national intelligence of what you said. Now, my clarification from you, which I desire, is at that page 410, the evidence which you sought to juxtapose what the President did and what the Deputy President was accused of having done is with regards to one being in office and another one alleging that he's not been able to attend sessions where that complaint came from. Give us the correlation of the two. And secondly, I share the sentiments by all the senators who've sought to get from you an understanding about the coalition agreements. You attempted to explain yesterday the relationship between company shares and coalition agreement shares. You were asked about the place of this in terms of the regimes of the two kinds of agreements. What do you say as regards shares in a company registered under the Companies Act vis-a-vis post-election coalition agreements registered under the Political Parties Act and the governance of
Senator Batuli Betty Montet.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to ask Honorable Mutuse, is there a minimum age of a client in a bank to get a loan of 700 million?
Senator Essie Okenyuri.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker, my question, I'm awaiting Dr. Andrew Mulwa.
Senator Cheriot Aaron.
mic. Two quick questions to you, Mutuse. Is there any crime that a Kenyan will have committed if they have 20, 30, or even 40 companies? Because I see you have listed 22 companies here. Is there any crime by just owning these companies you feel that the person you accuse has committed? Second, on this issue of Vipingo Beach, surely, Honorable Mutuse, what is the crime of the sons of the Deputy President being listed as directors? Because I have tried combing through your motion to establish what you consider to be either an illegality or a crime on their part by simply being listed as directors. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, is to the Council for the DP, Wakili Masharia. The clips of the then DP Ruto played by your team, could we read it to mean that it's an admission on your part that you're saying, if it was done then by a sitting Deputy President, please allow the current one to commit the same at this point? And lastly, the 30% allocation to Ford Kenya in the coalition agreement in ANC, how has it been realized?
Senator Margaret Kamar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity. I have one small question for Honorable Mluse, and that is on the witness, somebody who, by the name Peterson Jomo Muchira, who wrote an affidavit that touches on Olive Garden Hotel. He offered himself to appear and be cross-examined on the content of his affidavit. Was he invited?
Senator Kathuri Murungi.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Mine are just very strict clarifications. Number one goes to Honorable Mutuse. Honorable Mutuse, in ground 7, you have seen that His Excellency, the Deputy President, has inexplicably amassed a humongous, these are very strong ones, property portfolio, estimated at 5.2 billion. So my question is, this is within 2 years. I know for a fact that before an election, any eligible candidate clears himself or herself with the IBC before contesting. Therefore, for comparative analysis, do you have His Excellency the Deputy President's property or worth during the 2022, before the 2022 elections, so that now we can be able, as a jury, can be able to compare and see whether for 2 years, for sure, he has been able to amass this wealth. Number two, there is this property in Meru. Many Meru guys have called me last night asking me whether there is evidence to show that this land is in Meru. The last one is to the councils of the Deputy President. There was a clip which was played here yesterday when the Deputy President made a press conference in Mombasa. Immediately after the President did this in Nairobi, 2 different cities. Therefore, I did not get clarity from the councils about this, the question or the clip. So I was really requesting either one of them could be able to expound on that controversy between the 2 pressers in 2 different cities by the principal and the deputy principal of the Republic of Kenya. Thank you.
Senator Okoit Omtata.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I have a question for the Honorable Mutuse. To whom does this motion belong? Because in most of your answers, you keep on saying we.
I think Honorable Senator Mtata, that question was asked by the Honorable Enoch Wambua, Senator, and
Okay.
it was responded to. So just ask for a different clarification.
Okay, and other than that, I wanted to ask whether Honorable Mutuse knows the difference between an impeachment motion and a censure motion. And if he does, where does he place his motion? Is it a censure motion or is it an impeachment motion? And what are the thresholds for each of those two motions, if he understands the difference? Thank you.
Senator Chute.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika. Mheshimiwa Mutuse, ulileta ushahidi hapa mbele ya Senate ukidai ya kuwa Deputy President ako na 5.2 billion. Wewe ni wakili. Na vile unaongea jana unaonekana wakili shupavu. Ulileta ushahidi gani hapa ya kuonyesha valuation ya hii property ya hiyo katika documents yako kuonyesha imefika 5.2 billion. Swali ya pili, ulileta mashtaka 11. Vile unasimama huko leo, unaona aibu kidogo kwamba ulilete porojo mingi na mambo mingi kama ukiwa wakili hujafikiria vizuri. Sababu watu ya Marsabit wananiuliza, hiyo mtu kweli ni wakili ama ni mtu amekombolewa kutoka huko? Hebu jibu hiyo swali tafadhali.
Senator Beth Siango. Now, honorable senators, we are going to conduct ourselves in decorum. We are not in any way going to demean the witnesses. Ask your question, but stick to the rules of this House. Senator Beth Siango.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this chance. I have two questions. One for Honorable Mutuse. In your presentation, I heard that you touched on the inheritance and rights of the late Rigathi Gachagua. Have you reached out to the widow and the children of the late Gachagua to also give you facts? The next question is to the Council for the DP. Yesterday you played a clip of the president speaking in Muranga. What was the purpose of playing that clip? And how does it relate to the saying popularly now used by Kenyans, kufa dereva, kufa makanga? Thank you.
Senator Chimera.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question goes to the Council for the DP. I would wish to seek clarity on the documents that they tabled yesterday, being the coalition agreement, which basically informed the basis as to which the DP has been talking about shares. I just want to know whether there is any document that secures shares in respect of the region where the DP comes from. And secondly, Mr. Speaker, if the Council is aware that his client, at the time those documents were being prepared, he was a candidate for office, and now he successfully became DP, and that he needs to promote national unity, and if it is still in order for him to continue championing for the interest of one region as against the entire nation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Richard Onyonk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My questions are two, and I would like to ask Honorable Mutuse. I hold you highly. I don't think that you're as idiotic as our colleagues will say. I want to ask you, between the time when the Deputy President was a Member of Parliament and the time when he became the Deputy President, were you able to see whether there was a deliberate variation in the amounts of money that he was handling? Did you see whether the money that he was handling as a member of parliament, for example, changed then to the money that you brought in, where you're saying that there is some money laundering taking place. Were you able, or are you able to show that distinction in order for you to make your case? The second question I wanted to ask you again on the same issue. When you are trying to find out whether there is money laundering on any transaction, and I know chances are you did not have the technical expertise and maybe an investigative agency to help you. But did you, by any chance, find out money moving from anywhere, either through His Excellency the Deputy President's private accounts, or any money that was being borrowed? Because I know that one property you've mentioned that it was a loan, but all these other properties that you allege that the Deputy President had purchased, did you link that from money coming from some place or money coming from some illicit, like you say? Because I don't see that evidence on the table. And finally, I want to ask you again, Mr. Speaker, that if you look at the issue of the will of Mr. Gachagua, that is the former governor, did you by any chance get a way to ask either through the wife, the children, whether there was a meeting that took place where they were involved, or whether they were unhappy or happy with the transactions which were taking place? Because there isn't any evidence whatsoever of, for example, the wife complaining or the children complaining. Did you get anything like that which is substantive? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mutinda Tabit.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My two questions goes to you, Honorable Mutuse. First, in regards to this company by the name Crystal Kenya Limited, Ground 7, date of incorporation is 2009. And the CR12 that you have submitted to this House is for this year. Would you tell this House who was the initial director of this company? If that was so, was there any change of directorship of this company? Secondly, the one on trial is the Deputy President of this country and not his two sons. You have linked Crystal to be a proxy for the Deputy President through his two sons. Would you tell this House if you have any evidence that shows that money was wired from Crystal Limited to the account or to any company linked to the Deputy President?
Senator Shakil Abdallah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to Honorable Mutuse. If Judge Maina had filed any complaints regarding the being harassed by the Deputy President. Thank you.
Senator Miraj Abdullah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question goes to Mr. Mutuse, sorry. Is it your opinion that the DP was talking about enforcing the Kenya Kwanza coalition agreement when he was speaking about the shareholding issue? And the second one goes to the DP side, that we were reminded here of the oath we took when we assumed this institution. Is it in your place to say that your client has breached his own oath even before we make a conclusion? Because we were made to read the third schedule here on justice and directly and indirectly revealing such matters, and the oath of secrecy that His Excellency the Deputy President took. In his utterances, he used to speak about not the Mlima being touched. So in the essence of national unity, don't you think that your client, the DP, or you clarify for us that he has already breached his own oath even before we make a decision as the jury of this House? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Kisang.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. My first question goes to Mutuse and a comment. Honorable Speaker, I want to find out from Mheshimiwa, out of the 22 companies that you've alleged associated with the Deputy President, how many are really of interest to this particular impeachment? Yesterday you talked about the one in Rea Vivingo, and we saw that 10,000 of the shares, the total shares, are owned by the estate of the late Governor Gachagua. Then a comment, Honorable Speaker, is the clips that were played yesterday on shareholding. I think I want to ask the legal counsel for the Deputy President. It looks like we didn't stop campaigns after election. It looked like we continued to propagate campaigns because we expected the Deputy President, immediately after campaigns, we stop about this thing of shareholding because
Senator Maanzo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this would have gone to Governor Orengo, but since he said the clients, the National Assembly had given him instructions, I would like them to tell me what is the relevance of the verse they read yesterday. And also, on the floor of the National Assembly, they read a verse that when bad leaders rule, badness increases in a country. And when good leaders rule, goodness increases in a country. Finally, what is the maximum number of companies can an individual participate in under the law? I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Mutuse, you may now proceed to respond. You have exactly 10 minutes to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and honorable senators, for this opportunity. I have, from the questions that have come across, there are many that relate to the companies, and with your indulgence, allow me to start from there. Senator Cheriot, Senator from Marakwet, and several senators have asked why I listed 21 companies and why I said I did not have an interest in some of them. Number one, I think it is important for us to understand the context within which we are operating. I am not an investigator. And the law under Article 94, Article 95 does not make a member of Parliament, the National Assembly or Senate, an investigator. What I'm required to do is to establish a prima facie case, to establish that what is happening is outside the requirements of the law. And having been in this country and with a lot of enthusiasm in matters governance, I also know that this Senate has an opportunity to consider the impeachment of the late Rigathi Gachagua. And in that impeachment, because this is a House of Record, you will realize that most of the companies that I've listed were also complained about by the County Assembly of Nyeri during the impeachment of Governor Rigathi Gachagua. And the complaint was specifically that there was a brother to the late governor, and the brother is one Rigathi Gachagua, who was doing all the business in Nyeri County. And from that basis, therefore, I needed to expound to find out what these companies that had been complained about during that impeachment, what these companies that had been complained about in the Esther Minor decision in terms of money laundering had to do with the Deputy President and the things that I'm alleging against him. And it is on that basis that I listed these companies. I want to invite members of this Senate to also know that in doing this, it is not just about the direct evidence. It is also about the circumstantial evidence. It's also about the circumstances that led to where we are. That there are companies that were complained about doing business in Nyeri County. It came to this Senate. That the same companies were complained about doing money laundering, and a decision of the High Court by Justice Maina has been tabled before you. And today, we are complaining that the same companies are helping to do corruption and money laundering. And that's the reason why we bring those companies. Please notice that in an impeachment, because I've been asked about threshold, and I know you know about it, my work here is not to prove criminal liability. It is not to prove beyond reasonable doubt. My work here is not to prove civil liability, but to show political responsibility. And I have been able to do that. In terms of Vipingo Ridge, the question I want to invite honorable senators, and I request that you listen to me. I was told yesterday that Vipingo Ridge, the two sons of His Excellency the Deputy President, are mere directors, and that the shares are owned by the estate of the late Rigathi Gachagua. But then you ask yourself, all of you here, you have children, why would my brother's children own my estate and not my children? Why would my brother's children be the ones who are directors in my estate and not my own children? If you die today, will your children be the ones being directors of your properties, or it is the children of your brothers? Don't you see this is suspicious? It is obviously suspicious. Number two, in law, and I want to challenge anyone. An estate, what is an estate? An estate is the totality of your belongings. So can an estate own an estate? It is administrators. We would expect that the executors in the estate who are named in the will are the ones who would have been named in the shareholding. And we know all these trick games that are being played around to hide ownership. And that, because I talked about circumstantial evidence, that is to be compared with the affidavit of Mr. Jomo in terms of how Jomo was approached to be proxy in buying the property, and how Jahenda, the question that has been asked, is the one operating the accounts. And we have been able to show that the same Jahenda, the same lady who works at the DP's office, is the same person who is the manager at the hotel and is the one who is operating the accounts. So I invite you to see the web of secrecy, the web of conspiracy. It is a web. And this is why I said these are white-collar crimes. They are done by intelligent people. Sometimes it becomes very difficult to get direct evidence, but in the totality of the circumstances, it points to money laundering and corruption. Let me now go to Senator for Nandi, my good friend, Senator Cherangei. Thank you very much for the Bible verse. I'll keep on reading it, and every time I read it, I'll remember you. 5.2 billion wealth. Did I ask for the wealth declaration? I have said here I was not in an investigation journey. I was doing my role under the law to establish a prima facie case. And the last I know, in terms of public declaration, because this has also been asked, the Deputy President, during the presidential debate, as a candidate for election, did declare that it was worth 800 million shillings. I have listed companies, I have listed suspicious transactions that lead me to the conclusion that it is now worth 5.2 billion shillings. The law on unexplained assets, because this is important. The law on unexplained assets is such that you are asked, you own this, please tell us how you acquired it. Because as far as we know, your legitimate income cannot support this. That is what I have done. I have listed properties that I have laid evidence that they are either directly or indirectly owned by the Deputy President. It is upon him, and this law is established. It is upon him to tell us where he got money to buy those properties, because in as far as we know, his legitimate sources of income do not support that income. Senator Kinyua, thank you for the question. Treetop Hotel is owned by KWS and therefore is a public institution. The expectation at law is that it should be, if it was to be leased, that needed to follow the Public Procurement and Disposal Act, and therefore would have expected an advertisement, a competitive process to leading to its acquisition and leasing to a private person. There is no evidence that that was done, and that's why I allege and I approved that the Deputy President used his office to influence the acquiring of Treetops Hotel, abuse of office. Whether we have had opportunity to discuss with the children and the widows of the late Rigathi Gachagua, please allow me not to comment on that, because there are requests also, as I said yesterday, that we keep certain matters that come to our knowledge during this process in secrecy. Senator for Samburu, the necessity of including the companies, I have said. The children of the children of Rigathi Gachagua, they are in, I think one is in his early 30s, the other one is in his late 20s. Whether there is an age limit for somebody to obtain a loan of 700 million, no, there isn't an age limit, but the guess, yours and mine, how many children of that age in the Republic of Kenya would have security enough to secure a loan of 600 million? Because to secure a loan of 600 million, the bankers tell us that you have to place property probably that is 10 times more in value than that. When did they acquire that property? Number two, it is not our evidence, and this is important for me to clarify, that Abadea's Safari Lodges was acquired through a loan. It is an explanation that we have discounted. He said that they obtained a loan of 600 million, but the only document that was produced is an offer letter for the loan. There is no evidence to show that the loan was granted. There is no evidence to show any charge on that loan. And therefore, it is our contention that that explanation is not conclusive. That explanation cannot suffice. And therefore, it goes back to the Deputy President to tell us where he got the 535 million, where he got the 143 million to buy those properties, because the loan is not substantiated. Senator, in terms of Olive Gardens, we have been able to show Julian Jahenda, the one managing the hotel, and the one working in the DP's office is one and the same person. Jomo, we bought the hotel on a promise that the Deputy President, the truth of the matter is that
conclude, Honorable Mutuse.
Jomo bought the hotel
2 minutes to
as a proxy for the Deputy President. What problem do we have with refurbishment at the office of the Deputy President? We do not have a problem with the tender, we have a problem with the priorities. Kenyans today, and the Deputy President is talking about it, are crying about services. Is it a priority to renovate the office, or is it a priority to give water to the people of Kibwezi? Vipingo Beach, I have explained whether you would bequeath your wealth to your children or to the children of your brother. Senator of Meru, the property, there is an admission from the response by the DP that he actually owns a property in Meru, so I do not need to belabor that point. He has already admitted he owns a property in Meru, but he says he got a loan from one of the local circles. He has not produced evidence for that loan. And therefore, to my contention, that issue is already proved. In terms of the NIS address in Mombasa and why we complain about it, imagine, and I do not want to imagine that, somebody was a member of Al-Shabaab, and the Deputy President, none other than the Deputy President, stood up and said our intelligence system has collapsed. Wouldn't that be the right time to strike? That is the risk that the country faced by that particular announcement. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Let us have the second witness. As the counsel for the DP responds or clarifies on the issues raised towards them, may we have the second witness available for purposes of clarifications. Counsel, you may proceed.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Let me begin with the tortured question of the estate of the late Rigathi Gachagua. It is, I think, a shame that will stick on Honorable Mutuse for the rest of his years on earth.
Counsel for the Deputy President.
Yes.
There are very few clarifications that were directed towards you.
Yes.
So I'll give you 5 minutes.
At
You're
what-
not responding to the clarifications by Mutuse. You're responding to the clarification as sought.
Those are the ones I am. And, Honorable Speaker, there are quite a number of clarifications, especially on this estate issue, which please allow me 10 minutes.
All right, 10
Thank you very much, Senate. Now, I began my cross-examination of Honorable Mutuse yesterday with asking him how long he has practiced law and what law he has practiced. The problems you have as a Senate, as a quasi-judicial body, are born out of inexperience of legal practice. If you had practiced any succession law, I'm answering the question. I'm answering the question.
Order, Honorable Senators.
I'm answering the question.
I'm sorry, Senator Kavindu, just have a seat. I couldn't take that.
Yes.
What is the source of this?
I asked him yesterday. He answered the question.
Yes, Counsel for DP, what exactly did you say?
I just wanted to say that the National Assembly was provided with an affidavit by the executors of the will of the late Rigathi Gachagua. It is before you. It is volume number 4, stated, called the Further Affidavit of Rigathi Gachagua. Rigathi Gachagua. It should be before you. In that affidavit, the two executors state in comprehensive detail everything concerning that particular estate. They're as follows. 1, the estate property was divided in accordance with the will. The probate matter commenced and went all the way to the end to conclusion. All issues were resolved within the court case and in a sense are now res judicata. That is issue number 1. Issue number 2, you will find in that affidavit between pages 11 and pages 19.
Who sought that clarification?
I was asked, the question was asked here, I think, by Senator Dulo asked.
For DP, do not respond to what Honorable Mutuse said.
Senator
Pick
Dulo.
a senator's issue and respond to it.
That's what I'm responding to.
Exactly. So whose clarification are you?
Senator Dulo asked, can you please address the question of disinheriting the widows, if Hansard could confirm that? I believe she did. That's what I'm answering, yes. And so the will, as I'm explaining, does not disinherit the children or the widows or anybody else. It is merely because in the motion brought before you, there were properties listed in the motion that were part of the estate. That is the only reason this estate has become the subject of proceedings before the Senate and the National Assembly. So when you look at the will, as I've said, between pages 11 and 12, at page 13, if you have the document before you, this is volume number 4, there is a long list of how this estate was divided. And I won't go through it, you'll be able to read it yourself. That's number 1. Number 2, you will see an affidavit by the executors, except the Deputy President who did not sign this affidavit. These are the 2 remaining executors who have signed it, explaining between pages 4 and page 9 everything that was done in accordance with the law and in accordance with the law of succession, and that no one's property was taken away.
Senator Dulo, you know our rules. Proceed, Counsel. Proceed.
Yes. Now, I've been asked some questions about the issue of the Moranga video and about the shareholder agreements and whether 2 wrongs make a right. Our position is the opposite. Our position was that the address by the President in Moranga was in fact in confirmation of the agreements. The President was merely saying that they are implementing the agreements they agreed upon. And it was incumbent upon his deputy to assist his president in confirming that they were implementing the agreements. That is the purpose of the video. That is the purpose of those agreements. It is not to say kufa makanga, kufa dereva. I think Senator Beth asked that question. It is to say okoeni makanga na muokoe dereva. That is what we're asking you to do this morning. Senator, I believe Eddie, Senator Eddie Owiti, my good friend, has asked about the interrelation between Articles 91 and Article 232 and how those interact with the agreements. If I would call your attention, honorable senators, to the contracts themselves again, I don't know whether you have them. The contracts are in volume 3, and I'm referring you to page 429. At page 429, this is what the agreement said, and I'm reading, this is the primary agreement that was signed between UDA and between Ford Kenya and ANC. This is what it said. Further terms, parameters, and details of the sharing of positions of responsibility in the national government pursuant to this article shall be contained in a separate schedule to this agreement, which schedule shall be negotiated and executed before the date of the general election scheduled on 9th August. So there were subsequent agreements executed on how these shares were to be divided and to be implemented. That is issue number 1. But issue number 2, the parties gave themselves some room, and you'll see this at page 430. This is Article 22, Subarticle G. Notwithstanding the content of this article, the founding member parties hereby commit to make any adjustments that may be necessary to accommodate the development priorities of other parts of the country to ensure equitable distribution of Kenya's national resources and wealth for the benefit of every citizen and every part of Kenya. When the Deputy President takes a stand, we will be demonstrating to you with videos where both he and his boss, the President, went out of their way to say that the voting did not matter to how they were going to implement the development agenda. I think I was asked whether there are any contracts or agreements that were signed on behalf of Mount Kenya. I did not see any. We don't have any thus far. There were several parties from Mount Kenya, but they did not negotiate anything. Then an important question. The Deputy President did not say the government is a company. When you read the statements, he was making an example. It's like a company. It was a tool to explain a document. That's all he was doing. I'm pressed for time here. Yes, Senator Chariot asked a question about 2 wrongs making a right, and whether the current DP is conceding that because he did what the former DP did, that then he's guilty. Again, far from the truth. We are asserting, when you read the documents, the documents at page 412, this is the article where the President spoke, the former Deputy President spoke in Moyale. This is what he said. The Deputy President reiterated that he used to ask tough questions when attending the National Security Council meeting about schemes of murder. It is something that has troubled me a lot, and that is why we have put it to the Kenya Kwanza Manifesto that extrajudicial killing must come to an end. It is illegal and constitutional and offends every principle of the right of life. In law, there is no secrecy where crimes are committed or there is violation of the Constitution. The Deputy President was merely following the mentorship of the man who occupied the office before him, and was not releasing any secrets that did not concern illegalities or unconstitutionality. So that deals with the question of oath of secrecy. I think that was asked. And because of shortage of time, I'll allow my learned colleague, Mr. Elisha Ngoya, to come and answer a few questions. Thank you very much, honorable senators, for your time and your attention.
How many minutes, clerk?
Mr. Speaker, 3 minutes will be enough for me.
No, we need to know how much time you have. Okay. You have 2 minutes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ongoya for the Deputy President.
Proceed, Council.
Thank you.
Council.
To the question whether the Deputy President is aware that county governments are distinct, our answer is simple. Governments at national and county levels are distinct and interdependent. So the constitutional architecture is not to create pigeonholes, is to create cooperative and interdependent governments. And just to bolster that argument, you will notice that the allegation against the deputy president on Nairobi River relocation is not that he destabilized Nairobi County government, is that he refused to support implementation of a resolution of cabinet, a national government institution. Meaning even at that level, that was the understanding that this was an intergovernmental approach to clean up Nairobi River. On the question of Julian Jahenda, allow me to say this. The person who has brought Julian Jahenda in these proceedings is a deponent of an affidavit. Allow us to hold him to account on that affidavit when he comes to testify himself, because we have questions for him around this witness too. Then finally, on the question of Treetops Hotel, let this be very clear distinction. Treetops Hotel was not acquired by the company in question from KWS. Treetops Hotel was an assignment of lease. When the Kenya government gives you a lease, say 99 years, you can sell that lease. So it was an assignment of lease that was already assigned by KWS to a third party. So the construction that a company associated with the deputy president, rightly or wrongly, got this property from KWS is actually wrong. There was a completely different private property that had a lease. Then that company holding that lease assigned that lease. Thank you so much. My 2 minutes are over.
The second witness. Order, honorable senators. Senator Olekina, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question to Mr. Mulwa. Mr. Mulwa, if you look at the response in volume 6 by the Deputy President, the Deputy President says as follows, 4.2, volume 6, which is in page 11. In response to the allegations that you called him, or he called you, to be able to push for the bid board. He said that this is clear in paragraph 4 of the witness affidavit of Andrew Mulwa. He contradicts himself by claiming that on the 11th July 2023, I pressured him to surrender the original bid board, yet by the letter dated 5th of May 2023, KEMSA had requested for collections of the original bid. Thus, there was no cause for pressure to be exerted on Mr. Mulwa or any other person. Now, in your affidavit on page 70, you put an excerpt of your WhatsApp or communication between yourself and Dr. Rigathi, where Dr. Rigathi, it's alleged, he said, Dr. Ikunu Rigathi here, kindly contact me. When possible, there is a document for HE we are trying to collect. In the same affidavit, you have annexed 3 letters. One letter dated June 30th, and I want you to keep in mind of the 30th of May. June 30th, which is a letter sent to you, from KEMSA to ESCC, requesting for the bid board. That is June 30th. That is a month after the date that the Deputy President alleges to have received information from KEMSA asking him to collect the bid bond. Secondly, you have a letter dated 11th July, where you communicate to the company called Shabika Impex Private Limited asking them to collect the bid board. Yesterday, when you were being cross-examined, you said that you were afraid, you felt pressured when the deputy president called you, allegedly, and asked you to surrender the bid board. Could you please give us a chronological of events? Because this letter is dated 11th that you sent to them. You allege that the deputy president called you on 11th,